Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I'll tell you what, when it comes to businesses, we always love throwing around buzzwords. We always hear about companies saying that they are customer-centric. We always hear about the acronyms of UI, UX, which is user interface, user experience. We always hear about all these things, but in 600 plus episodes here on the show, we've never talked about one of the most important acronyms of all, which is CX, the customer experience. We are going to test how customer oriented all of our businesses are, and we're going to do it with an incredible expert to talk about all these things. So I want to tell you about today's guest. His name is Matt Egol. He is a recognized thought leader in the experience management space. After more than 25 years of consulting experience at companies like Booz Company and PwC, Matt launched JourneySpark Consulting to work with clients in more flexible and effective ways to help them meet their objectives. Matt has worked across a broad set of industries, from retail to consumer goods to healthcare to financial services to technology to industrials. His clients have included F1000 companies, private equity portfolio companies, and other high growth companies. I love what he does with his own company, JourneySpark Consulting. He provides coaching, workshops, and other consulting support to companies looking to accelerate value from their investments in customer experience, which is all what we're going to talk about today. So I'm not going to say anything else. I'm so excited to dive into my interview with Matt Egol. All right, Matt, I'm excited that you're here. Welcome to the show.
It's awesome to be with you. I'm really excited to chat with you today.
Heck yeah. And listeners are going to find out. We'll talk about it a lot at the end of today's episode, but you put out so much awesome content. You are truly, it's very rare when we say someone is a thought leader. You are actually putting so many thoughts out there about where business is going, where CX is going. So I'm excited to dive into all of this. But before we do, fill in those gaps. Beyond the bio, who the heck is Matt? How did you get here?
Well, I'm a recovering consultant, as you mentioned, and really been in consulting my whole career, and I'm trying some new things now. And I've really been enjoying working with companies as part of JourneySpark Consulting. But how did I get here? I started out actually in the media and entertainment practice of Booz when the internet was a puppy, which was really fun and exciting to work with companies in consumer goods and retail and media right at the beginning of the internet, to really help them embrace content and digital advertising and e-commerce right at the beginning. And I've ridden that wave and brought in from retail and consumer and media companies to healthcare and financial services. Along the way, I helped launch Booz Digital, which was about helping big companies behave more like lean startups and drive new ways of working, and then help lead the digital and retail practice at PwC after it acquired Booz & Company. And now I've launched my own gig. So it's been a fun ride, and I've enjoyed working with a lot of the leading associations, and not just clients, on helping them drive thought leadership and engage their members. And most recently, I've been hanging out with the MMA Global, which is an association of chief marketing, chief digital, chief customer officers and their members to help them work on this customer experience topic with their members.
Yeah, I love that overview, especially because you pointed out, you're right, you've been working on this stuff, especially in the digital world, since the OG days of the internet, which I feel like the one thing that, as the internet has evolved, the thing that's been really sexy for everyone to talk about is UI, obviously. We can all tell a website that was built in the 90s versus in the early 2000s versus today. So UI is something that we're all familiar with. We know what these things look and feel like. But I think the thing that, for one reason or another, we haven't talked about enough is CX. And you live in this world, Matt. So to you, this stuff is second nature. For most people, they've never sat down and said, okay, beyond what does my website look like? What is the customer experience? What is the customer journey that people experience with my company, with my brand, with my products and services? Where do we even begin with CX? I'd love for you to give us an overview of what CX means to you. And then included in that, I'm just going to lump onto this one question is, where does CX begin and where does it end?
Well, So UX and UI are really important. And one of the things we did at Booz Digital actually was engage in putting strategists together with UX and UI and data scientists to help clients work in agile ways on building experiences. Because a lot of what digital is about is building experiences versus buying advertising. So you kind of shift from a buy to a build mentality. Now, I find it really helpful to broaden the aperture from digital to customer experience, because most experiences are phygital. They're physical and digital, Brian. So you've got, and in fact, at Walmart, they have a sign of like the intersection of physical and digital, like a street sign, which I think is kind of fun, down at the headquarters. So the experiences, unless you're Netflix, include physical. And there's going to be experiences, whether it's in a store, a hotel, healthcare. There's almost always some physical experience in addition to digital. It could be your fulfillment experience. If you're even with e-commerce, there's still a physical experience. Again, unless it's a fully digital product like Netflix. So customer experience is the collection of all your unique interactions with a customer that collectively drive your brand. And a lot of times when people focus on the brand, they do it in terms of what are the words people use to describe the brand, like the identity of the brand. But that's actually only part of it. That's focusing on you and not the customer. How does the customer describe you? What actually matters a lot in terms of that sum total of experiences that create the brand are how they feel about themselves during their interactions with you, the emotions, the feelings. How do they feel about themselves as they interact with you over their journey? Collectively, that actually makes your brand or breaks your brand if those experiences are not good. And in fact, a lot of these experiences are more, you're experiencing them at an unconscious level, and then they don't always come up to the conscious level. So people talk about thinking fast and thinking slow, where the loyalty loop is basically you slow down and think more if you have a bad experience, if there's friction. Otherwise, it tends to be your unconscious and your habits. That's basically what brand loyalty is you've had so many good experiences that you're thinking fast, and it's actually your unconscious that's driving your interaction with the brand.
Yeah, I love that overview, Matt, especially because it's something that we can all relate to. Not even talking on an entrepreneurial level right now. As customers, as consumers, we've all experienced these things. And when you talk about, I love that you called out the phygital world, that it does cross those boundaries. I think about something that's so simple, like a credit card. I'll never forget my early 20s when I got into travel hacking and I wanted frequent flyer miles. It's the first ever time I paid for a credit card with a $450 annual fee. That didn't feel good for 24-year-old me. But what did feel really good is when it came, it didn't come in a white envelope, Matt. It came in this whole presentation box, and you opened it, and they had all these incredible graphics. The card was situated right in the middle. They had a shiny layer of, I don't know what it was, plastic or something over it. So everything looked incredible. It made me feel like I was in exclusive company, which you talk about. The big topic that I want to dive into, Matt, is you said a lot of this stuff is subconscious, whether we realize it or not. Even if it's something physical, that's easy for us to see that we're feeling it. But even if it's the way someone makes us feel when we reach out to customer support to reset our password, little things like that, we are having feelings all day, every day about all the things around us. So where do we even begin, Matt, to tap into the subconscious stuff that our customers are going to experience with our brand, with our companies, with our products and services?
So every business has a vision for how they want to grow, how they want the customer to perceive them, how they want their customer experience to go if they take that step. And what I would encourage the listeners to think about is, what are the brand defining experiences I want to have? What are those peaks that exist in the journey today? They're going to, they're the moments that matter in the journey that make that vision come real. And you can focus on existing peaks, or you can actually create new peaks. If you think about the experience, and a lot of research has backed this up, Brian, what people remember, things that are memorable and not moments, are the peaks, the valleys, and the last thing that happens. That's why you get a suite, like a bonus suite at a restaurant when you get the check, because they don't want the last thing you experience to be the check. They want you to leave with a high note. That's why Southwest focuses on the baggage experience, because it's the last thing you experience. So what are your peaks? How do you create bigger peaks? Yes, you want to drain the pain on all the little, irritations or things and make sure you don't have particularly deep valleys. But I like to focus on what are the brand defining peaks you want, and how is that actually going to drive the behaviors you want and the loyalty that you want. The example you gave of the credit card is actually a really good one. With healthcare clients, for example, I found a lot of them do a welcome member box for health plans. It's a physical experience because it starts the journey good, starts it well. And with loyalty plans with retailers, the first 90 days when someone signs up is actually really important to driving the customer lifetime value. So defining the peaks you want and making sure some of them happen early in the journey are really important when you think about experience design.
Yeah, I love that because it gives us such clear points to jump onto and to really focus our energies on, as opposed to us just saying, yeah, we are a customer-centric business. We think about the buying experience, for example, but you're right that there are all of those. It is. I like how you talk about it as peaks, because there's so many peaks. And the question is, how do we build even more peaks? And then that tangible example of the end is, you're right. When I walk away from a restaurant, if I got those Andy's minced chocolates, that's like the best way to end a meal at any restaurant. So I love that you gave us those launch points to really focus in on, but I do want to go a little bit deeper into those areas to focus in on, because and Matt, I'm curious if you feel the agitation that I do when it comes to companies saying that they're customer centric, because most of the time when they're saying that, they're actually not. I can think of, you gave one example of when you sign up for the membership, the first 90 days are crucial. So I signed up for Fabletics as a 30-something-year-old man. I get all of their ads on all of social media. And Matt, when you sign up, they say, hey, 30 days from now, you're going to be charged from your membership. You'll want to cancel it before that. And I was like, wait, what? That's what you're telling me as I sign up for this membership, is that I need to they literally tell you, take out your calendar and set a reminder to cancel your membership in 30 days so you don't get charged. That's not a great way to do it. What is it that we can do to get inside of our customers? Aside from Fabletics asking me for my own personal feedback, what are some of those ways that we can actually get into the minds of our customers to feel their experience so we can start reshaping that experience?
Wow, this is a really rich topic about how do you generate the right insights that can guide your brand, your innovation, your experience design. I actually think, when you're reimagining insights and this point about, the right launching off point, it's helpful to think about what is the metaphor that the customer is using to think about their experience with you. And one of the things people can find on my website, JourneySparkConsulting.com, are book reviews. And I'd actually recommend the book review for Clued In with Lou Carbone, as well as the blog series on reimagining insights I've been writing with Lou. Lou is the father of experience management and applying unconscious thought. I partner with him on thought leadership and client work about how you bring insights to bear. And so he has this concept of a deep metaphor, Brian, which is very relevant to what you were just asking about, which is when it turns out in the human brain, we simplify things. We don't like effort. We don't like work. This is just goes all the way back to fight and flight and keeping things simple. And our brain organizes our experiences into metaphors. And then everything else gets slotted into which metaphor it works with. So it turns out there are 19 deep metaphors that you can apply to customer experience. So for example, Michelin tires is a container metaphor. You feel safe. You feel taken care of. Nike is a connection metaphor about connection and being part of the community. So their different brands will have different metaphors that apply to them. You can actually discover which metaphor is most relevant for your brand. And you can do research to help think about how do I create the right experience that evokes the right emotions so that I'm skiing downhill then. I'm focusing on the metaphor that my customers are using for my business and designing peaks in the experience that reinforce and will feel authentic and real and more valuable because they connect with that metaphor. A lot of really great creative campaigns, people talk about lightning a bottle and great creative. Well, what they're actually doing is they're aligning to these insights, to this metaphor. They may not explicitly know that's what they're doing, but that's actually what the creative process is doing, is aligning to the way the brain works.
Yeah, that's fascinating stuff. Listeners, I want to call this out for you right now, is that Matt is giving us tangible examples of ways that we can intentionally, that's the thing I want to call out, intentionally sit down and think about what our brand not just stands for, but what experience it delivers for everyone who comes into contact with it. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, Matt, holy cow, I've never thought about those metaphors, for example, it's because way too often our businesses lack the intention of sitting down and deciding before we can execute. So of course you can't execute if you've never intentionally thought about this. So Matt, I love that you're introducing us to some of these resources, which 1,000,000% we're going to talk about. And listeners, it's all going to be in the show notes, everything that Matt mentions as far as resources. So stay tuned for all of that. But Matt, I really love that you brought your work up with Lou Carbone, because as I was researching your work and when I talk about you being a thought leader, it's stuff that I see with you and Lou out there creating video conversations where you guys are both talking about the direction of all of this stuff. And it leads me to where I wanted to explore with you. You guys talked about the 10 absolutes when it comes to customer experience. Walk us through that framework and some examples there.
So we thought about how is experience management changing? So Lou, I mentioned, is one of the fathers of experience management. He created the phrase together with Stephen Heckel, who wrote The Adaptive Enterprise, and they wrote some early stuff together. And Lou's firm, Experience Engineering, has continued to work in that area. And I've worked on projects with clients collaborating with his company. And we're still he's a mentor and dear friend of mine. The 10 absolutes is an idea we thought about how to talk about how the practice of experience management is changing from the industrial age to the age of the experience economy. So what's different? We're moving from an era of make and sell approaches, which is more of a push mentality, to more of a dynamic, responsive approach where we're responding to the customer. So we're much more fluid and responsive to the customer than we used to be. We're also moving to a model where we're listening more actively. We have more continuous listening to the customer. I think also we're fusing creativity with analytics. We're more focused on the unconscious and the emotion versus the rational and the features. So you know, with your UX and UI, to bring it back to that point, you don't just want to think about the functional, rational benefits on your website, your mobile app, or your physical experience. The functional would be like, you know, how much does something weigh? How much does it cost? You know, how hot is it if it's coffee? How does it taste? These are functional benefits. They're important. But the emotional content of the experience is much greater based on the human-to-human interactions. They're called humanic clues as opposed to functional clues. Or the environmental clues, the mechanic clues, which are like the sight, sound, smell. So if you go into a Starbucks, the interaction with the barista and the sound of the coffee grinding, the smell and the seeing, the visual merchandising, they're actually more important to the branded experience than the taste of the coffee itself. Now, if the coffee tasted bad, game over. But what gives them a brand premium is much more than the physical characteristics. So the 10 absolutes are a set of principles that you can see. The first 4 are on the website right now, and we'll be releasing more on a regular basis over the coming weeks.
I love that, Matt. And I love that teaser because for sure, I mean, we're obviously touching the tip of the iceberg here, but I'm going to want listeners to check out all of this stuff that you're putting out there because I love it. I love that you guys are so transparent about sharing your forward-looking thoughts because this isn't stuff that someone can read in a textbook. We are talking about moving forward here. And As you're talking about these things, Matt, I don't even know how I'm going to phrase this, but it's such an important topic, particularly with the audience that we're talking to right now, is that as you're talking about all of these big topics, it's hard for a small business owner to sit there and say, gosh, I have to think about customer experience stuff. Well, I'm just trying to get sales, man. I'm just trying to increase my revenue. I'm just trying to launch my new website. All of these other considerations that small business owners have. And Matt, I think it's fascinating because your vantage point, you've worked with huge companies. You've worked with small companies. You are also a fellow entrepreneur. You understand the real life implications and responsibilities that business owners have. And so with that in mind, I can see how it's easy for a small business owner to say, I just need to do these things to stay afloat right now. When in reality, as a consumer, I would argue the opposite, is that small businesses, it's even more important for them to build a customer experience. And I'll give an example, Matt, because then I want you to talk about this. The example that I want to put forward as an argument for small business owners is tires. When I need new tires for my car, I can take a chance and go to my local tire company, Joe's Tire Shop. The reality is, when I think about a discount tire and America's First Choice tires, like whatever those big national brands are, they have very intentionally thought of the customer experience. They know how to put me at ease with regards to warranties, with regards to scheduling, with regards to all of these things that just make it easier as a customer to say yes. Whereas Joe's Tires, they're bogged down by day-to-day obligations, but by not focusing on this stuff, that's why they're not succeeding. And so I think it's even more important for small businesses. So Matt, now I'm going to toss it up to you with that example in mind of how are small businesses supposed to manage this? Because obviously it's important. Does this look like a quarterly sit down with either yourself or an external board of advisors, even if it makes up your friends and your colleagues, how you collaborate with others in your industry? How the heck are small business entrepreneurs supposed to do this stuff?
Well, right now, small businesses do get services that touch the customer experience. And there's a lot of services out there for things like building your website or email marketing or social media marketing or launching an app if that's relevant for you. So there's a lot search marketing. So there's a lot of these kind of individual services, and some small businesses get that from a guy they know down the street. Others get them from larger service providers that have started to provide services targeting the small business market. And there's really high churn in these services because the business is on their own. They often don't get the advice they need. They often don't know how these things fit together. And so they get pitched a lot and they might try new things. And there's much higher churn among the small businesses than among the larger companies, a lot of the time because they're not getting all the value they need because they're in fits and starts and don't always know what to do first and how these things fit together. What I've started to do, and this is part of why I launched JourneySpark Consulting, is I really enjoy the human interaction with clients and helping them shape their thinking, engage their teams, and make progress. And working in a big consulting firm, you tend to be on defense versus offense a lot with the bigger companies. And I wanted to be more open to work with lots of different size companies earlier on in the ideation and the coaching versus the big consulting project where you back a school bus up and drop the students off to do the work. And then you coach and manage them. So I really enjoy that. And what I'm doing with smaller companies is getting involved in helping them build some upfront insights about where does experience have impact in their business, and then how can they get more value out of using these tools like the website, email, mobile, social, or employee training to improve the customer experience and help put them in touch with a network of partners versus try to do everything myself, Brian.
Yeah, I love that answer. And I love the way that you took it because you really highlighted, I think it's the gap in what I was picturing and thinking, which is, well, first you got to figure out where along the customer experience journey that you want to start attacking. Then, of course, there are resources, there are service providers, there are experts where you can start then attacking it. So I love that awareness piece being at the front of it. I also love, Matt, that you brought up churn, for example, because that's one business metric that any monthly recurring membership site or any recurring revenue model is very keen on understanding is their churn. That's one metric. It's one of the key metrics of them. For me, I've always argued to people that lifetime customer value, probably the most important number in all of business. So when we talk about metrics, where do these things show up in our metrics, Matt? Where does customer experience highlight itself as either something that's really working for us or something that needs more attention?
There are three types of metrics that you can focus on as a business as it relates to customer experience. The first is important is outcomes. What is the business outcome you want? You talked about customer lifetime value. That's actually a really phenomenal metric, although it's complex to understand the drivers of customer lifetime value without some of these other metrics I'm going to talk about. But CLTV is customer lifetime value is a great metric. You can also look at churn as a metric, price realization as a metric, growth rates as a metric. Like, what are your business metrics you care most about? And the reason why customer lifetime value is so good is it integrates some of the other metrics like innovation, growth, pricing, retention, cost to serve, all impact your customer lifetime value. But those are all outcomes. But if you focus just on the outcomes, that's like an artist trying to get better and improve by only looking at the finished painting rather than the process they went through to get there. And my mom's an artist, so why not use an art metaphor? The other two areas I'd point you to are experience data and operational data. Experience data are what people are thinking and feeling and saying about you and your brand. Think of a rating and review. That's a form of experience data. A survey after someone buys your product and you send them an email, that, like say from Qualtrics or another survey vendor, that is experience data. And increasingly, experience data is a really rich source of insights. You can mine the content in the ratings and reviews. You can mine the social media. You can mine the chatbot. You can mine messaging and text messaging. So these are all unstructured data that you can mine, which is actually complements and more valuable in many cases than your survey data itself. Those are experience data. And then there's operational data, which comes out of your systems, your website, your mobile app. These are your digital footprints. Experience and operational data are leading and lagging indicators of your outcomes. So as a small business, you want to keep it simple. You'd want to figure out, how can I generate reviews as a source of content and just look at your reviews as a source of insights. You don't necessarily have to spend a lot on technology unless you have a large volume of these, but actually start looking at what people are saying, because the 3-star reviews tell you what you need to do to be a 5-star review.
Yeah, I love that, Matt. It reminds me of the Einstein quote, which is, if you want to impress someone, make it complicated. If you want to help someone, make it simple. And what I hear in the way that you just went through that is there are simple ways for us to start measuring that. I want to push back because I'm super curious the way that you'll handle this question is that when it comes to reviews, so that is the experience data that you talked about. And you mentioned the 3-star reviews. From my experience, it's so much easier to get 5-star reviews and 1-star reviews than it is to get those 3-star reviews. We always hear from the people who had a really bad time or a really great time. What are those ways? You talked about sending out surveys, for example, and I'm curious to hear your perspective on how often those types of things should happen for your average small business owner. But on that topic, how do we start garnering that feedback that we so desperately care about, not just that we need, that we care about to shape these things? Do we incentivize people with a gift card? Like, what is the best ways that you've seen to actually gain that data?
So you're going to have a bias in your survey to the highs and the lows. The reviews will be a little better about that, and the way to get the broadest, most unbiased sample are to increase the ways that people can do it. So you can put it on your receipt, you can send people an email, you can have a sign, please review us, and things like that. That are ways of generating a higher volume of reviews. You can also have your people in the store encouraging people to use your website or your mobile app, and then there'll be pop-ups on the site asking people to review. What you got to be careful about is having the people on the front line in the store too aggressive, just where they're gaming the system. Like, think of the car dealer where the guy's constantly pressuring you to fill out the review because they're incented on it. This is called, gaming the review, where you want to make sure that you're getting, good reviews and not just people who are in your store trying to kind of manipulate people to give you a high score.
Yeah, which that is that delicate balance. For us as business owners, we want that feedback, but we don't want it to feel like a chore for our customers, or that we are aggressively pursuing it as if we're selling something almost. So I love that word of caution in there, Matt. There's so many different things that we talked about in today's episode, so many different pieces of food for thought that we need to sit down. But I think a big takeaway here is that awareness, is thinking about, you call it those peaks. How can we increase the number of peaks that we have with our customers in their journeys with our businesses and brands and products and services, but also how can we shape and make sure that those peaks come with the experience, the feelings that we want them to get? What is it that our brand stands for? So much good stuff in this session, Matt. I always like giving my guests the hard job, which is putting a pretty little bow on this. For listeners sitting there thinking, gosh, there's a lot of different things that I should be taking action on from today's session, what's the one thing that every business owner will benefit from when it comes to sitting down and saying, you know what, this is the time. Matt's the guy who came into my life listening to this episode today. Now I'm going to start thinking about customer experience. Here's what I should do.
So there are two things that I would suggest doing that would be easy to figure out how you can apply this for yourself. If you go to my website, to JourneySparkConsulting.com, there's a What We Think tab, and there are two resources in there for you that I think will be helpful. One is book reviews. So if you found some of the ideas here interesting, they sparked some ideas for you, you might find a book review in there, whether it's the lean startup, your startup, or a business that's small, trying to have the best practices and behaviors of a lean startup. That's a great book. You could read the review. It's fast. You might want to read the full book too. I've read it 5 times myself. There are other books in there about, unconscious thought or change management, or books by Simon Sinek or Adam Grant, or leading professors and business practitioners. You might find the reviews interesting. Now, I enjoyed writing them. Hopefully you'll enjoy reading them. And if you want to chat about them, let me know. The other resource is there's a blog called CX problem statements. The coaching page on my website is organized around these problem statements. But you might read that blog around your CX problem statements, and it has a lot of ideas in there about how you can get started on some of these problem statements.
Yeah, so many resources. Matt, I'm going to open the stage up for you in just a second again, but I want to sing a few of your praises as well, because when it comes to your website, that is the thing that initially caught our team's eye when we reached out to have you on the show to talk about all this customer experience stuff, is that it almost feels like your website is laid out with the customer experience in mind. So typical business websites, when you go there, it's all about them. It's all about, here's what we do, exactly that, which is helpful because us as consumers, we want that information. But your website talks about that. Our services, here's exactly what we do. And by the way, it's laid out so clearly. A lot of businesses, sometimes you read it and you still think, what is it that they do? But your website really hones in on that. But then one thing that listeners, Matt just shared with you, is the What We Think tab. That's the one thing that immediately we were like, we got to have Matt on to talk about customer experience. He's pumping out videos, blog posts, articles, the book reviews that he's talked about. There are a whole series of content. He talked about what he's putting together with Lou. So many resources on his website there, as well as the About Us section, where he actually talks about the leadership team behind his company, what his personal background is, how it applies to the work that he's doing now. And I love the fact that you guys have a whole section about Share Your Spark with a word cloud that shows some of the things that are important when it comes to thinking about customer experience. So many good things going on there. I think it's a really appropriate first action for entrepreneurs who are listening to this, saying, okay, now's the time. I'm going to start thinking about this. This is the catalyst catalyst for me to be more intentional about it. So Matt, I love all of those things. As we round out this episode, I feel like I tooted your horn. Maybe I stole a little bit of the thunder in telling listeners where to go, but I'd love for you to tell listeners where they should go, as well as your website. Plug that link once more to learn more about you, the awesome work that you're doing, and JourneySpark Consulting.
So it's www.JourneySparkConsulting.com. You can find that, and if you Google JourneySpark Consulting, you'd find it too. I want to close with a story, which is my mom, who's an artist, who actually helped me on the logo. And you'll notice also on the website some paintings, which are an art series, motion, and get back to unconscious thought and emotion. She did an art series. She's a collage layerist. She paints and prints and collage that I've got some artwork I'm using in the business, which is kind of fun. But the reason I brought up the story is she gave me a book called The Gift. And it's all about how art is, you want to share your gift, you want to share your ideas with other people. And she gave me that book. And then later I read a book by Seth Godin called The Linchpin. And there's a book review on that book if you're interested. And he talks about the gift mentality of customer experience as a gift. And you want to create those peaks. You want to share that gift. So, and he references the book, The Gift, in his book. But my mom gave me the book before he wrote his book. So my mom actually got there first. And I personally am so excited to work on JourneySpark Consulting and share all this content and work with clients, because I think of customer experience as a gift, where I want to help clients as a gift, and I want them to help their customers. So it's very fulfilling to work in a business where I get to work with a larger number of companies. And that's one of the reasons why I launched JourneySpark Consulting, is to be able to give the gift to more people.
Yes, I love how you shared those stories with us, as well as tying in the gift, which is clearly so deeply impactful in your life and in your work. Listeners, you can see how much intention and meaning is behind every aspect of the work that Matt's doing. So definitely check out his business website at JourneySparkConsulting.com. You all know the drill. We are linking to that, as well as Matt's book reviews, all the resources that he talked about in today's session, down in the show notes, wherever it is that you're tuning in. So check those out. Otherwise, Matt, thank you so much for joining us today on the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
It's been great to be with you, Brian. I'm excited to continue the conversation and hope this sparks some great ideas for your listeners.
Thank you.